The name of this piece is The Plowman's Dream, and I'll get to what that title means in a second. There's something, a kind of a stillness that comes over pieces that are intended to be level when they're level. In gardens, if you have a stone with a flat top and you set it and it's like this, it doesn't work. But when it comes just perfectly like that, it's called tome or tomeru, to become still, you know. Okay, so the pieces that I've donated here are called The Plowman's Dream. And although the motif is obviously yin and yang, I use the words shin and so. So shin is the character shashin no shin, ma, which is truth. And so is the character kusa for grass. And it doesn't make any sense when you hear that. But it's a word that's been used in tea, words that have been used in tea, to describe two different kinds of aesthetic. And these are the basic aesthetics that you find in Japanese art, all art. The art will either fall into one or the other or a blend of both. So shin is the aesthetic of human control and human perfection. So it is a person trying to prove, look how perfectly I can cut this. Look how perfectly I can finish this lacquer. No errors, no warbling, no scratches. Perfect, you know. And you'll see that in some Japanese arts, this kind of absolute control and perfection of the human hand. So describes the aesthetic of wildness, uncontrolled or seemingly uncontrolled, serendipity, aspects that are not within the control of the artisan. For instance, a potter puts a pot that they've made in a fire, and it comes out somehow, and the kiln has done something to it, and it's moved and twisted, and it has ash glaze on it. That's out of the control of the artist. So it's not an example of human control to the very last end. Shin and so are the two aspects that feed the Japanese garden. So there are aspects of the Japanese garden that are clearly trying to incorporate nature, either natural elements in their natural state, like stones, not carved, just natural, or trees that are formed to look like they're windswept and very natural, although they are controlled by human hand. And then fence elements and other things that are absolutely perfectly made and tightly bundled and crisp. So you've got this sort of range from the truly wild through the man-made wild into the clearly man-made. But that's a very important basic element of Japanese gardens. If you were to make a Japanese garden machine-made, it would be too precise, it wouldn't come alive. And if it was just a forest with no human control, it wouldn't be a garden either. It needs both of those elements. So shin so is a fundamental aspect of Japanese gardens, Japanese arts in general, and that's what this sculpture has distilled, the shin and the so. So one side of the ceramic wall is quite gnarly and filled with pebbles and rough, and on that side we have a hemlock bark. So it's just a plate of bark that's been laid down. The other side, the wall is crisply finished, and the furrowing lines on that side are cut stone. So very much man-made lines. Both the left and the right are furrowed like a plowman would do. A plowman would furrow the field with a plow. A tree gets furrowed by the natural genetics of how bark grows. So the furrowing, the kind of indentations and long striations and valleys you see in bark is a plowman, but it's not a human plowman. It's God, it's DNA, it's something about nature that furrows things, that plows through things and creates these long striations of valleys and ridges in nature. So that's what we're seeing here. An aspect of the plowman's dream that's created by nature, the hemlock bark, and an aspect of the plowman's dream that's created by the human hand, those crisp slices of stone.
So you also have the pottery piece, right? On one side you can see
That's right.
this variation or striation.
Right.
On the other side it's that raw.
Right, and that's so purposeful. You'll see on all of these pieces, one side is quite irregular and somehow gnarly or imperfect, and the other side is quite cleanly treated. and that's intentional as well. Yeah.
And this is a slightly collaborative element with
Well,
Momoko,
it is in a sense. Momoko, my wife, is a ceramic artist, so having clay in the studio downstairs, I got into doing ceramics. But the piece itself is something I made and fired. So we've collaborated literally on other things, like I've painted bowls and plates and things that she's made. But this is more my work, but obviously my work in ceramics is thanks to Momoko having a ceramic studio downstairs. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And can you tell me, so they're the two pieces, right, that have these somewhat similar elements to them.
Yes.
Although you have the different settings, right? The aluminum versus the steel.
Yep.
And then in the aluminum, there's that one stone that sort of sticks up.
Right. Yes.
Is there anything specifically around those, or just?
So, the shumisen stone. Shumisen is the Japanese word for Sumeru, the sacred mountain of Buddhism and Hinduism and Jainism. It is the cosmological center point or axis of the universe. It is an upright, immobile thing around which the universe is built. And that cosmology begins in Tibet region, comes through Asia, through China, Korea, and into Japan quite early through Korean craftspeople back in the Fujiwara period, and has been part of Japanese gardens up until now, this central stone that kind of holds everything and creates a stillness. So I didn't put one in one case, and I did in another, and it doesn't really change the basic theme of Shin and So. It's just a design element that I put in one and not in the other. Yeah.
Excellent. Just also thinking, any elements of care or things that you like if people are observing them?
Right. So if you touch the metal with gummy fingers or even not gummy fingers, eventually the oils of the hand and everything will start to show up. So keeping it clean and mildly dust-free would be great. Other than that, there isn't much in the way of care. In the super long run, if something happens to the metal frames, this one, which has been patinaed, it's steel and has been patinaed, would have to be refinished in some way. And the aluminum one could be rebuffed in the way that I buffed it, and it would be new again. But that's like 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road. You probably won't be in this position any longer. Yeah.
We'll see. You never know.
You never know. That's right. That's going to be right there. You're still going to be director of the institute. Yeah.
This is wonderful. Well, also, just while you're here, we did place one of the pieces already in the stone sea. Yes. Any just thoughts on that? Having seen it as the artist, it'd be great to sort of capture some of your impressions.
Well, it's perfect. I was telling you earlier that if I designed a building to hold that piece, that's what I would have designed, an empty space with a 3-story spiral staircase going up from it. It's absolutely perfect. So I'm really happy about its location, and it looks really good there. Yeah. It would be great, and I don't know, this might be a problem for you, if you had a label somewhere on one of the walls, which doesn't have to be big or lengthy, but if it pointed towards where people could find out about the piece. With pieces like this, you look at it, and the first thing is an aesthetic level. It's beautiful, the shape, the colors, the patterns, and you just appreciate it for that reason. But no one's going to see Shin and So in the piece just by looking at it. But if they learn about that, because they're linked to a website or something which tells about it, then the piece begins to have a story that talks to them each time they see it. So it would be good somehow if there was even a small label which would reference a person either to the Institute's website or to my website or someplace where there would be a description of what this is.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Certainly we'll take that into consideration. Yeah. And it would be, we were thinking about various ways in which we can connect.
It. So this book, The Art of Setting Stones, is it's 8 essays or short stories, they're kind of a little of both, about what gardens are, especially what Japanese gardens are. This particular book was translated into Japanese. It's the only book in Japanese I have out, and it's called this art of setting stones is the first line of a very old gardening treatise called the Saku Teiki. Saku, making, te, niwa, garden, ki, kiroku, records of making gardens, which the first line of is ishi o taten koto. Ishi, stone, o taten is tateru, stand up, koto. So things related to the setting of stones or the standing of stones, which was the Heian period way of saying making a garden. You didn't have a word for gardening or making a garden. The verb was standing stones. That's how they said making a garden. So under the title Ishio Taten Koto, this book was published in Japanese, which is neither here nor there. But
were you an apprentice? Did you apprentice as
I did not as an apprentice, as a gardener, because I'm not a gardener. I don't prune trees. I don't have a truck and do that sort of work. I'm a very hands-on designer. So when one of my gardens is being built, I'm there. I'm setting the stones with the gardener and planting trees and shaping things. But I don't. That isn't my business. So I never apprenticed with a carpenter. As a gardener, as a deshi, to learn those very skills of a shokunin. But just by working with gardeners over 20 years, I did apprentice with them. I learned from them so much. So they taught me a lot about how you set a stone and how you move a tree and all, everything. So I learned from university and professors. I learned from gardeners in the field as well.
Well, did you, with particular, were you just whoever your clients were and they said, did you have a set of connections in the Kyoto community that you're working with? Or
a lot of my work early on, I was an employee in an architectural firm who did restorations of old wooden buildings or moved them and rebuilt them. So I was doing the gardens for those projects. So someone in that arena would have a gardener, either someone we knew or someone the client knew, and I would work with them to build it. I've worked in different parts of Japan, and almost every project was a new gardener somewhere. So I'm very used to, meeting someone and figuring out how I can make something with this person.